So let me just tell you a little bit what it is I'm doing and why I think it would be useful to you. You know I've been doing management development of different sorts for the last 30 years. And the last 10 or so years I've taken a particular interest in coaching, and I've attended most of the international conferences over that period, and I've studied lots of things and so on. And for 5 or 6 years I've been teaching managers and potential coaches about coaching, because in the world that we now live in, it is a very useful way of communicating with people. And one of the standard things that is normally taught is what is called the GROW model, which was developed in this country by Sir John Whitmore. And it is such a good model that it's difficult to argue with it. But what concerns me is I've never actually used it in practice. And so that started to get me to think. And then the other thing is that, well, actually, there are lots of things you do need to know if you're going to become a professional coach. You need to have, how to organise things, you need to know about confidentiality and so on and so forth. But actually, coaching is not so much even a generic skill, it's a universal skill. And parents and so on will naturally have some coaching skills. And some people really do have natural coaching skills, and they are able to communicate very effectively with people, and they naturally know the right sorts of things to say and to do to help people to develop and grow. And good parents definitely have it, and you can see it. The difficulty is when they become teenagers, and when they become teachers, and when they become business people, they tend to lose all these sorts of things. So it's been bugging me for a while. What is it actually that what I call ordinary people need to know about coaching, so that not people are going to have coaching sessions or anything. What is it they need to know? And so what is it that a natural coach does? And so I've been modelling that, and also modelling what I do when I work with people. And there are a number of things that natural coaches do. The first thing is they have a very informal relationship. They don't make any fuss about it. And the second thing is that they know exactly the right thing to say, and it's something which causes people to think for themselves and hopefully to make some sort of progress. And what they don't do is to tell people what they ought to do, and they certainly don't tell people what they're doing wrong. And I first started studying NLP about 19 years ago. And in NLP in those days, it was very much based on modelling therapists. And the way that NLP is taught is that you have an introduction to tell, then you have a demonstration, then you do lots of exercises. And the basis of the exercise is that it's not role play, it's real play. People are working on real issues of individuals. And not surprisingly, in the early days, NLP students are not particularly competent. And I would be involved in exercises, and they'd be working on me, and I'd have an issue, and I really, really wanted to make a breakthrough. I was ready for it, and they wouldn't ask me the right question. I'd be sitting there, please ask me this question, I'm ready to make a breakthrough. And they'd ask me some stupid other question because they weren't up to it. And then we had this question introduced to us. One of the things that we did was to do content-free learning, and this question really solved my problem. And the question is, what would be the most useful question for me to ask you now? And then, when I know what that question is, I ask the question, and then it works. And I started to use this in my coach training in order to get over to people that the client, the person being coached, actually knows what it is they need to do. And you as a coach quite possibly don't. So I use this consistently at the beginning of every coach training program, just as an exercise to get over the fact that it's not for the coach to know, it's for the client to know, and it's the coach to draw out. But then it occurred to me that actually this could be turned into a coaching model of its own. So I now have a system where it's so simple that you can put it on a credit card and keep it in your pocket and as a reminder. And it's basically based on this question. And I believe if you have sufficient rapport, you could have a multi-year career as a professional coach just asking this one question, because it's so powerful and effective. But it would get a little bit boring with time, so it's nice to have some alternatives. And one of the things that very often happens, and it certainly used to happen to me, when people ask me a key question, my natural response was to say, I don't know, which was a resistance, but it was also asking for some time to think. So it's useful to have an alternative as follow-up question and say, well, okay, what would it be if you did know? So this is two things. It actually recognises and accepts the person claims they don't know, but it also gives them time to think again. And there are different ways you can ask that. You say, well, actually, if you didn't try guessing or something, but basically it breaks that blockage. What would it be if you did know? Then, assuming that we are attempting to achieve something, very often it appears that the coaching session or the discussion is going off as a tangent somewhere. Now, it may be that we are getting distracted, and this very often happens, and one of the roles of a natural coach or a coach is to keep somebody focused. But it may also be that this is actually a really real issue that's come up, that the coach doesn't recognise, but the client does. So just have a simple question is, how does that relate to your stated outcome? And they can either say, actually it does, or yeah, it doesn't, does it? And then we can go back. One of the things that coaches do is to challenge and to stretch people. So you may appear to be making some good progress, but have a sense that actually we're cruising. So we have a question here, what would be even better than that? And you can actually go on and on. What would be better than that? What would be better? And really get someone to think creatively. Then a lot of people, and I'm a natural one, will tell you what they don't want. Now you cannot achieve anything successfully knowing what you don't want, because it's totally without any direction. So we ask a simple question is, well, okay, that's what you don't want, what do you want instead? And it forces them then to get back onto a track. And that really is all that you need, except that when you've achieved something, it's all very nice, and this is what happens in training and so on, very nice, you've learned stuff. But unless you do something, it's not going to make any difference. So there are two possibilities. One is that you've been not doing this for ages because you've been procrastinating or putting it off. And the other one is that you've not been doing it because you didn't know about it, but now you do and you're going to do it. So if you've been putting it off, a really powerful question is say, well, what stops you? Or what has been stopping you? And sometimes, I find this one of the most useful things in coaching, sometimes it's something really simple. We go away and we address that simple thing and suddenly we can make progress. So when we've cleared all of that, and the most important thing then is what you're going to do. And at one level is what is the smallest first thing that you're going to do. And those of you who heard me talk about Martin yesterday, I would say, what are you going to do tomorrow? And what is it that is so simple that it's not going to cause you any problem? Because Martin got blockages about doing all the things he ought to do. And if you think about Chairman Mao and so on, the longest journey starts with a single step. So what is the smallest thing we're going to do? Sometimes it's actually put something in a diary. Something, in this case, it was he was going to do something last night so he could report to us today. But it needs to be something simple, but it just starts to get you going. So it's very, very simple. You can carry it around, and basically it's only one question. I ask you, what is it you want me to ask? And then I ask it, and you do it. And the fascinating thing is, and the most wonderful thing is, I ask them, what is it you would want me to ask you? I ask you, and the response is, that's a really good question. And it was their question. You don't need any skills. And this is the first stage of a program we put together called Invisible Coaching. But the point about it is, if you ask these questions, or you use the structure of these questions in your normal conversation, people don't need to know that you're coaching. So if you are a parent, if you are a teacher, if you are a manager, or if you are a salesperson, these questions can be really powerful just in helping people to make progress. And they are totally non-intrusive because you're putting all the power with the person on the receiving side. So basically, if you know where you're going, you ask the questions that follow naturally, but immediately you get stuck. You cannot be stuck because you just go back to the original question. Okay. So that is all about the structure and the content and so on. There's one other thing that I would just like to introduce, is that when somebody is thinking, their eyes will tell you that they're thinking in some way or another. But depending on how they're thinking, the eyes will work in different ways. You don't need to know how that is, but you can monitor what's going on by noticing the eyes. So if you can learn to identify when somebody's thinking, then the final mistake that people make can be avoided, which is jumping in when somebody's actually internally processing. So if you've got these questions and you can just monitor when they're thinking and when they're not thinking, then you'll know what to say and you'll know when to say.
So when you're saying about the eyes, what are you looking for?
Watch Martin.
Right, okay.
But when he's interacting like he is now, he's looking at me and so on and so on. When he starts to think, he may start to just go off into a gaze.
Right, okay.
So you can notice then that his eyes he's completely disengaged. It could be that his eyes start shooting up here, or they're shooting here, or they go back and forth. That's where he's accessing different parts of his memory and so on. But the point is, his eyes are related to me now. He's engaged with me. When those eyes stop being engaged with me, it means he's engaged with himself, and therefore we need to give him the time to do that processing.
I think these are really great questions. One of the things I learned, not at the first, but somewhere along the line when I was working, was to never worry about the words "I don't know" and silence. And because I used to think, oh gosh, I've asked a really stupid question. And then I gave people time, and I found that the answers come from somewhere back there. And even if they go, I don't know, and you give them enough time to just process and think, out it comes. And they don't always know what they know either. And our job is to catch the stuff that's relevant to the questions and to what they want. And it's a fascinating thing.
Yes.
It always happens, always works.
Yes,
Yeah.
I first really got the message with Tad James, and it's a matter of this honouring the person, because it's so often people are trying to be helpful, trample all over the person. So I know that you don't know, okay, I know that you don't know, and if you did know, which basically says you do know, but in a nice way, I know that you don't know, and if you did know, what would it be? It gives them the respect and the confidence, and also a bridge then to moving forward.
I think that the whole concept of invisible coaching, just the name to me, is powerful, because what it's saying to the coach is get out of the way. Because it's the coach that usually gets in the way of the coaching.
Yes. And it is a means of avoiding do-gooders.
Yeah.
We're talking about this possibly in actually making some progress with things where there might be some blockages or resistance or something. But it might be just as simple as a manager signing up and saying, well, you know, what's the best thing I can do to help you? And they might say, well, open the window. It doesn't have to be something deep. But instead of coming in and saying whatever is in the manager's mind, it's just opening up the conversation to whoever they deal with. And it's particularly relevant with children, I think, isn't it? I mean, I think it's relevant with young children who haven't got good negotiation skills. And it's relevant with teenagers who are all tied up on everything. And it's so easy just to create a barrier, and it gets worse and worse and worse. But this should enable the communication to open up.